In 1987, Def Leppard's Hysteria became the most expensive album ever made. $4.5 million spent across 3 years and 4 studios. By 1988, they'd sold 12 million copies worldwide. Yet somehow, they were drowning in debt. While Pour Some Sugar on Me dominated radio, their accountants discovered a shocking truth. Every hit single was actually pushing them deeper into the red. This is the story of how one of rock's biggest-selling albums nearly bankrupted its creators, and the desperate gamble that saved everything. January 1983. On paper, Def Leppard was living the dream. Pyromania was moving 200,000 copies every week. Photograph dominated radio. MTV had their videos in heavy rotation. The band that once played Sheffield's working-class pubs was selling out American arenas. Reality told a different story. While their album went platinum, band members were sharing 2-star hotel rooms on tour to save money. As Photograph topped the charts, lead singer Joe Elliott was borrowing money from the road crew to buy food. Their success was an illusion, and their label, Mercury Records, knew exactly why. The numbers were staggering. Their contract with Mercury had buried them in debt with Pyromania's recording costs. The production budget alone meant they needed to sell over 1 million copies just to break even. Even then, their contract's fine print ensured most profits went straight to the label. While their contemporaries in Motley Crue were buying mansions in Los Angeles, Def Leppard's members were living in shared apartments back in Sheffield. By late 1983, despite Pyromania selling 200,000 copies weekly, they were still £750,000 in debt from legal battles with their former management company, Lieber Krebs. Even selling out San Diego's 55,000 capacity Jack Murphy Stadium barely dented what they owed. Every gold record on their walls represented money they hadn't seen. The real crisis hit in 1984. Pyromania had earned diamond certification for 10 million albums sold, a staggering achievement that should have made them millionaires. Instead, band members were flying coach and staying in budget hotels while their contemporaries bought mansions. The industry celebrated them as one of rock's biggest success stories, but their bank accounts told a different tale. February 1984. Recording began on what would become Hysteria. By January 1987, they had spent 3 years and $4.5 million creating one of rock's most successful albums, more than double what Queen spent on their most expensive record. The strategy was unprecedented. 4 different studios, 2 different producers, and no budget limits in their pursuit of perfection. The expenses piled up fast. Jim Steinman, fresh off his success with Meat Loaf, commanded a 6-figure fee before they recorded a single track. While he was earning $10,000 per day, the band members were living on $50 weekly allowances. When creative differences emerged, they had to pay him off and start over. The label demanded hits, and Def Leppard was now too deep in debt to argue. Enter Mutt Lange, the producer behind Pyromania. His fee was astronomical, nearly $20,000 per week, but his contract included a detail that would prove even more costly. He could demand unlimited re-recordings until satisfied. Studio time that should have lasted weeks stretched into months. Months turned into years. While the band slept on studio couches to save money, the meter never stopped running at $4,000 per day. The contrast with their peers was shocking. While Guns N' Roses recorded Appetite for Destruction that same year for $370,000, Def Leppard was burning through studios across Europe. Whistleord Studios in Holland ate 6 figures before yielding a single usable track. Studio des Dames in Paris and Windmill Lane in Dublin added hundreds of thousands more to the bill. A single month of recording cost more than most bands' entire albums. Studio logs reveal their relentless perfectionism. Pour Some Sugar on Me required 6 weeks just to record, running up a tab of nearly $200,000. The guitar solo for Gods of War needed 24 complete takes, with studio time alone costing $50,000. Every day added thousands to their debt. By early 1987, just recording backing vocals cost more than most bands spent on entire albums. Mercury Records accountants were panicking. No rock album had ever cost this much. But what terrified them most was Mutt Lange's latest demand: scrap nearly everything and start again. The producer heard something missing in the mix, and fixing it would cost another $1 million. The band's gamble had just doubled down. Either Hysteria would become one of the biggest albums in history, or it would bankrupt everyone involved. There was no middle ground left. December 31st, 1984. As Rick Allen's Corvette hit a stone wall at high speed, severing his left arm, Def Leppard's future hung in the balance. The human cost was devastating, but the financial avalanche that followed would nearly destroy the band. The immediate impact was brutal. Tour insurance premiums jumped from £50,000 annually to over £150,000 overnight. Lloyd's of London demanded proof Allen could still perform. Warning rates could hit £500,000 if he couldn't deliver. 26 major venues pulled out, triggering penalty clauses that cost £800,000 in cancellation fees. The technical challenge became a money pit. The Simmons Drum Company's first prototype cost £20,000 and failed within weeks. The second attempt cost $30,000 and couldn't handle live performance. Each failed design added to their debt while insurance companies watched every penny, knowing their premiums would skyrocket if the technology failed. While other bands toured and earned, Def Leppard made monthly payments: £75,000 for rehabilitation costs, $30,000 for experimental treatments, $50,000 for specialized equipment. Even with no touring income, they kept paying Rick his full share. 20% of nothing was still nothing. But the gesture cost them another £100,000 in borrowed money. August 1986. Rick Allen's triumphant return at Monsters of Rock should have been pure celebration. Instead, their business manager delivered the final tally. 19 months without touring had cost £4.2 million. Insurance complications, $600,000. Technology development, $250,000. Rehabilitation, $800,000. The label's accountants weren't just questioning their future, they were calculating their end. Q Prime management had guided Metallica and AC/DC to millions. For Def Leppard, they became an expensive lesson in fine print. Their standard contract, 20% of gross revenue, not net profit, meant management got paid before the band saw a penny. The math was ruthless. A $35 concert ticket broke down like this. Venue took 40%, promoter took 30%, management took 20% of what remained. After expenses, the band split $2.50 five ways. Even selling out Madison Square Garden meant each member earned less than the hot dog vendors. Every success became a financial trap. When Pour Some Sugar on Me hit #1 in America, Q Prime's commission on radio play alone was $50,000, more than the band earned from 6 months of airplay. Album sales. Management took 20 cents of every dollar before manufacturing costs, promotion, and record label percentages. A million-selling single earned management more than its creators. International success only doubled the drain. Japanese venues demanded 40% off the top. European VAT claimed another 20%. By the time management took their cut, some overseas shows actually cost the band money to play. Their sold-out Tokyo concert in 1987 earned Q Prime $90,000, while the band lost $20,000 on the night. The contract's standard industry deductions became a blank check. Travel expenses, legal fees, promotional costs. Each month brought new bills that had to be paid before the band earned anything. A single-month statement in 1987 showed $300,000 in deductions against $400,000 in revenue. Q Prime earned $80,000. The band split $30,000 5 ways. By late 1987, the cold reality was clear. Every gold record, every sold-out show, every hit single pushed them deeper into the management maze. While other Q Prime clients built fortunes, Def Leppard's success was making everyone rich except Def Leppard. By late 1988, Hysteria had exposed the dark side of success in the music industry. While the album dominated charts worldwide, Def Leppard's accountants uncovered a troubling reality behind their triumph. Every victory seemed to come with a hidden price tag that pushed profitability further out of reach. Their innovative in-the-round stage design perfectly illustrated the problem. While it gave every fan a great view, it doubled crew costs and equipment needs. Each show required duplicate sound systems, extra lighting rigs, and complex staging that ate through ticket revenue. Even sold-out arenas struggled to generate profit after expenses. International touring created its own financial maze. Japanese venues demanded special equipment import fees and hefty customs charges. European dates faced heavy tax burdens, with each country taking significant percentages off the top. The band could sell out Tokyo's Budokan Arena and still lose money after expenses. MTV success proved equally expensive. Each video for Hysteria cost more than their entire first album's budget. While Pour Some Sugar on Me dominated airwaves, the band was still paying off video production costs. Every new single meant another expensive promotional clip. The merchandise operation that looked so profitable on paper became another financial trap. The merchandising company claimed 40% off the top. Venues demanded their 10% cut. Management took 20% of what remained. A $30 t-shirt generated barely enough profit to cover its production costs. Even sold-out shows with merchandise lines around the block couldn't generate enough revenue to offset their massive obligations. Late 1988 marked a crucial turning point. After moving millions of units, Hysteria finally generated enough revenue to cover its unprecedented production costs. For the first time, every new sale meant actual profit instead of debt reduction. The album that had nearly bankrupted them was finally doing what it was designed to do: make money. The touring operation underwent a complete restructuring. Insurance costs dropped as Rick Allen proved his reliability night after night. The custom electronic drum kit that had cost a fortune to develop was now paying dividends, allowing better performances than ever before. International tours were reorganized to minimize tax exposure and maximize profit potential. Merchandising deals were renegotiated. The band gained more control over product quality and pricing, ensuring higher margins on every item sold. Publishing rights were restructured, turning radio play from a promotional tool into a genuine revenue stream. Each change helped transform their success from impressive numbers into actual income. By 1989, Def Leppard had learned how to make their success profitable. The massive machine they'd built to support Hysteria was finally working in their favor. Rick Allen's triumphant return had turned their biggest liability into a unique strength. The expensive videos that had drained their resources were now generating consistent MTV exposure without additional costs. The impact rippled through the music industry. Record labels looked at Hysteria's massive budget and started questioning whether any album was worth that kind of investment. The era of unlimited studio time was ending. Other bands faced tighter budgets and stricter oversight. Def Leppard had changed how labels approached album production forever. By 1989, Def Leppard had learned how to make their success profitable. The massive machine they'd built to support Hysteria was finally working in their favor. Rick Allen's triumphant return had turned their biggest liability into a unique strength. The expensive videos that had drained their resources were now generating consistent MTV exposure without additional costs. The impact rippled through the music industry. Record labels looked at Hysteria's massive budget and started questioning whether any album was worth that kind of investment. The era of unlimited studio time was ending. Other bands faced tighter budgets and stricter oversight. Def Leppard had changed how labels approached album production forever, but they'd proven something crucial. Artistic ambition could survive business reality if you were willing to learn from your mistakes. While their contemporaries struggled with changing trends, Def Leppard had built something sustainable. They weren't just making hits. They were creating a business model that would support them for decades. The story of Def Leppard's missing millions reveals the true cost of making history. 3 years in the studio, $4.5 million spent, a custom electronic drum kit built from scratch. Each success seemed to cost more than it earned, until they finally cracked the code of turning massive sales into actual profit. The final numbers tell an extraordinary story. By 1998, US sales alone reached 12 million copies. 7 hit singles dominated radio. Tours spanned 3 continents. The album that nearly bankrupted them became one of the most profitable in rock history, but only after they learned to control its costs. Their journey changed the music industry forever. No record label would ever again invest that kind of money in a single album. No band would get 3 years to pursue perfection. But more importantly, they'd proven that even the biggest gambles could pay off, if you were willing to learn from every expensive lesson along the way. The final ledger shows Hysteria's true legacy. After spending $4.5 million on production across 4 European studios, losing 19 months of touring revenue during Rick Allen's recovery, and watching huge percentages of their revenue vanish into contracts, Def Leppard had created something unprecedented. The album that cost more than twice what Queen had ever spent would eventually sell 12 million copies in America alone. But more importantly, they'd learned the true cost of making history, and finally figured out how to profit from it.